The night was quiet on the research station Aurora. Its vast windows looked out into the blackness of space. Stars scattered like diamonds against velvet. The crew floated through the corridors, their movements slow and deliberate in the low gravity. Most of them were scientists, engineers, and explorers, trained to study the universe without fear. But tonight, there was a tension that no one could explain. Something unusual was coming. It began as a faint shimmer, a subtle distortion in the sky that no telescope had detected before. At first, they thought it was a meteor or a reflection from Earth, but the shimmer grew larger, more defined, until it became clear that it was a ship. Unlike any human vessel, it had no sharp edges or visible engines. Its shape flowed like liquid glass, reflecting the stars around it. The ship hovered silently over the station. And then, without warning, a section of it opened. From the opening came a figure, floating down gracefully. The crew held their breath. This was the moment humanity had waited for. The first contact with an alien species. But when they saw her, a ripple of unease spread through the station. She was unlike anything they had imagined. Her body shifted in shape constantly, like it was never fully settled. Iridescent colors flowed over her skin, changing from pale blues to soft greens, then to shimmering golds. Her limbs were long and uneven, and her face had features that were almost familiar, but distorted in ways that made the human mind struggle to recognize them. Some of the crew whispered, unable to hide their reaction. "She's strange," one said quietly. "Why would they send that?" But Dr. Elias Kane, the station's lead xenobiologist, felt something different. He did not see ugliness. He saw a creature that had traveled across the stars, risking everything to reach them. He felt awe, curiosity, and a strange warmth in his chest. He floated forward, keeping his movements slow and deliberate, not wanting to startle her. The alien extended what humans would call hands. In them, she held a glowing cluster of objects, small lights that twinkled like miniature stars. They floated above her palms, moving gently as if they were alive. The station's lights reflected in the cluster, making the stars shine even brighter. Elias stepped closer and smiled. "Hello," he said. His voice was calm, welcoming. The other crew members exchanged nervous glances, but Elias did not care. He could feel that this moment was important, that first impressions mattered. "You are beautiful," he added, surprising even himself. The alien tilted her head. For a moment, her shifting form seemed to pause, almost as if she was trying to understand his words. Then she lowered her hands slightly, letting the stars drift slowly between them. In that simple gesture, the tension in the room changed. The other crew members began to relax, seeing Elias's reaction. Maybe she was not something to fear. Maybe she was something to admire. Elias reached out, carefully, to touch one of the floating stars. It responded to his presence, moving in a small orbit around his fingers. A soft hum filled the air, almost musical, vibrating gently against the station walls. The alien watched him, and he felt the faintest flicker of communication passing between them, though no words were spoken. "What is it?" one of the engineers asked, her voice trembling slightly. Elias looked back at her, still holding the tiny star. "I think it's a gift," he said. "A gift from her species. And not just any gift. Look at it. It's alive. In a way we don't fully understand yet." The alien floated closer, and Elias noticed her movements were both graceful and careful, as though she understood the fragility of the humans around her. She did not speak, at least not in words, but subtle vibrations filled the room. Elias felt them in his chest, in his mind, like a rhythm that carried meaning. He realized that this was how she communicated, through sensations and patterns, rather than spoken language. Over the next few hours, Elias and the alien, whose name he learned was Zyra, began to establish a connection. It was slow, tentative, but filled with wonder. Elias discovered that the stars in her hands were not just decorative. Each one was a fragment of information, glowing with encoded data. The patterns shifted as he studied them, and he began to see that they formed a map of nearby galaxies. A guide that could expand humanity's understanding of the universe far beyond anything they had imagined. The crew watched as Elias interacted with Zyra, slowly overcoming their initial fear. She was not dangerous. She was not hostile. She was a teacher, a messenger, and perhaps, Elias thought, a friend. He saw the beauty in her asymmetry, the elegance in the way she moved, and the intelligence in the way she responded to their curiosity. She had come across unimaginable distances, and her gift was a sign of trust. Elias realized that humanity had always measured beauty in symmetry, in things that fit neatly into their minds. But here, in front of him, was a different kind of beauty. It was intelligence, courage, and connection. It was the willingness to reach out to someone completely different and offer something precious without asking for anything in return. Zyra held her stars higher, and Elias lifted his hands to match hers, letting the tiny lights float between them. He felt a rush of emotion, a mix of excitement and humility. He was touching a part of the universe that no human had ever touched before, and it was in the hands of this alien being who had traveled across galaxies to meet them. As the hours passed, the crew began to explore Zyra's gift. Each star fragment responded to thought, almost like a living interface. When Elias thought about a distant galaxy, one of the stars would shift slightly in alignment. When another crew member tried to interact, the stars adjusted, creating a pattern unique to them. It was as if the stars were alive, learning, and adapting to those who approached them with curiosity rather than fear. Elias could see the excitement building among the crew. They began to forget their initial unease, focusing instead on the possibilities. With Zyra's guidance, they realized that the stars could reveal knowledge about energy sources, new materials, and even routes to distant systems that had previously been unreachable. Humanity was on the brink of a new era, and it all began with trust, empathy, and a simple act of kindness. By the end of the night, Zyra had become more than an alien visitor. She was a symbol of what humanity could achieve if it embraced the unknown. Elias held one of the stars carefully, letting it float above his palm as he looked at her. "You are beautiful," he repeated softly. This time, not just as a description, but as a recognition of what she represented. The crew nodded silently, understanding that beauty was more than appearance. It was courage, wisdom, and the willingness to connect across impossible divides. The first night ended with the station bathed in the soft glow of the floating stars. Elias knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity had received a gift unlike any other, a gift that would challenge, inspire, and change them forever. And as he watched Zyra, standing gracefully in the zero-gravity chamber, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had chosen to reach out to them, and in doing so, had placed the stars and a piece of the universe itself in human hands. Outside the station, the night sky continued to stretch endlessly, full of stars and possibilities. For the first time, humans did not feel like tiny specks in the cosmos. They felt connected, part of a larger story, a story that included a being from across the galaxy who had chosen to trust them. Elias smiled, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity had already taken its first step into a broader universe, guided by curiosity, empathy, and the courage to see beauty where others might see fear. The stars in Zyra's hands pulsed softly, reflecting the heartbeat of the universe itself, and in that light, humanity felt for the first time that it belonged among them. The days after Zyra's arrival were unlike any in human history. On the Aurora, excitement and curiosity had replaced fear, though the crew remained cautious. Each member had begun to understand that Zyra's gift was more than just a cluster of glowing stars. It was a key to the universe, and they were only scratching the surface. Dr. Elias Kane spent almost every waking moment with Zyra, learning to read the stars in her hands. The patterns shifted with thought, forming lines and constellations that contained information about distant worlds, energy flows, and new physics that humans had never imagined. Each time Elias touched a star fragment, he felt it respond, pulsing softly against his fingers as if recognizing his intent. The rest of the crew followed more slowly. Engineer Mara Chen tried interacting with the stars, and she found that when she imagined a structure, the lights rearranged themselves to reflect it. She could see the beginnings of new technologies, designs that were beyond human capability, yet somehow understandable when guided by the stars. Some of the scientists were still skeptical, wary of trusting an alien gift so completely. "What if it's dangerous?" one whispered. "We don't know what it could do. It might be a trap." Elias shook his head. "We won't know unless we try. If we approach this with fear, we'll never learn. Zyra didn't come here to harm us. She came to share." Zyra seemed to understand him. Her form shifted slightly, and soft vibrations passed through the chamber. Elias felt the meaning clearly, though he knew no human words could capture it. She was encouraging trust, patience, and collaboration. As the crew began to explore, they discovered something remarkable. The stars in Zyra's hands were not static. They seemed to be learning from the humans as much as the humans were learning from them. When someone concentrated on a problem, the stars rearranged themselves, offering hints and guidance. When they imagined possibilities beyond current understanding, the stars illuminated paths forward. It was as if the universe itself was teaching them, mediated through Zyra's gift. One afternoon, Elias noticed a subtle change in Zyra's behavior. She hovered closer to him, extending the stars in a more complex formation. He followed the patterns carefully, and suddenly, a new idea emerged. A map appeared, not just of galaxies, but of energy currents that connected them. Streams of power that could be harnessed for travel, communication, and even new forms of life support. Humanity had never conceived of energy in this way. It was as if Zyra's species had been observing the universe for millennia, and now offered their insights freely. The excitement on the station was palpable. Mara's team started experimenting with prototypes based on the new energy patterns. Machines that had struggled with efficiency now operated at near-perfect levels. The crew began to feel that the universe itself was cooperating with them, responding to thought and imagination. Zyra's gift had turned their small station into a center of discovery that no human mind alone could have achieved. Yet not all were ready to embrace the change. Communications from Earth had grown tense. Some governments and corporations saw the alien gift as a threat, something too powerful to be left in human hands. Requests for Zyra to be studied, restrained, or even removed reached the station, creating an invisible pressure that the crew could not ignore. Elias knew that fear and misunderstanding on Earth were inevitable, but he also knew that they could not allow it to dictate their actions. Zyra seemed to sense the tension. Her form shimmered with faint pulses, as though warning them. Elias placed a hand on hers, letting the stars float between their palms. The gesture was simple, but it carried meaning: unity, trust, and courage. He realized that they would need to protect not only Zyra, but also the gift she had brought, for it had the power to transform humanity if used wisely. Over the next few days, the crew worked together in ways that surprised them. Scientists, engineers, and explorers collaborated in projects that blurred the lines between disciplines. A physicist might design a structure while a biologist adjusted the energy flow to sustain life within it. All the while, the stars guided them, suggesting solutions, highlighting risks, and revealing connections that no human mind alone could see. Elias noticed that Zyra's presence inspired more than knowledge. Her being awkward, asymmetrical, yet undeniably intelligent and graceful, changed the way humans looked at beauty and value. Crew members who had once been critical now spoke of wonder, curiosity, and admiration. They began to see flaws as unique qualities, challenges as opportunities, and differences as strengths. Zyra had come to them as an ugly gift by human standards, but she had become something far greater: a mirror reflecting the potential of humanity itself. One evening, Elias stood at the observation window with Mara, watching the stars drift past. "Do you ever feel like the universe is speaking to us?" Mara asked softly. Elias smiled. It is. Not in words, but in patterns, in understanding. Zyra is the voice, and the stars are the letters. If we listen carefully, we can learn anything. Their peaceful work was interrupted by a sudden alert. Sensors picked up movement beyond the station's orbit, a fleet of unknown ships approaching at high speed. The communications channel crackled with warnings. Earth authorities demanded that Zyra's gift be secured immediately. Panic rippled through the station. Elias did not panic. He knew that the stars in Zyra's hands could help them, but he also realized that human fear might sabotage everything they had built. We have to protect her, he said firmly, not because she's alien, but because what she has given us is too important to lose. Zyra floated calmly in the zero-gravity chamber, her form shifting in response to the approaching threat. Elias reached for the stars, letting them swirl between his hands. The lights brightened, and a soft hum filled the station. They responded to his thoughts, forming shapes and barriers that mirrored human ideas of protection. The first wave of ships came into view. Their design was unfamiliar, angular, and aggressive. They were clearly not interested in diplomacy, they wanted the gift. But the crew was ready. Working with Zyra, they activated the stars fully. Energy flowed in arcs, forming shields and patterns that repelled the ships without harming them. The attackers fired their weapons, but the protective lights absorbed the blasts, transforming the energy into harmless glows. Elias marveled at the sight. The combination of human ingenuity and alien guidance created strategies no single species could have devised. Crew members moved with precision, following the patterns of the stars, creating a dance of defense that was both beautiful and effective. Hours passed, and the attackers eventually retreated, confused and unable to overcome the defenses. The crew breathed a collective sigh of relief. Zyra floated among them, her form now radiating warmth and soft light. She did not speak, but her vibrations communicated gratitude and pride. Elias knew that they had not only protected her but had also proven that humanity could rise to challenges when united and guided by understanding rather than fear. In the quiet after the conflict, the crew gathered around Zyra. Elias held one of the stars carefully, letting it float above his hand. "You've given us more than knowledge," he said softly. "You've shown us courage, cooperation, and trust. We will honor your gift." Zyra's form shifted slightly, as if acknowledging his words. The stars between them pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. The crew realized that this moment was more than survival, it was a lesson. Fear could destroy, but understanding could create. Differences could divide, but collaboration could unite. And the universe, with all its unknowns, could become a place of wonder if humans were willing to reach out with open hearts. By the end of the second week, the station had transformed. Laboratories hummed with activity. Prototypes glowed with alien energy. And the crew moved with confidence they had never known. Zyra's gift had become a symbol of what humans could achieve when they embraced the unknown. Elias stood once more at the observation window, looking at the stars that had brought them together. He thought of the civilizations beyond Earth, of the possibilities that awaited humanity, and of Zyra, strange, shifting, beautiful Zyra, who had given them the first step. The universe was vast, full of challenges and mysteries. But Elias knew this. Humanity was ready. And with Zyra at their side, there was no limit to what they could discover. The stars pulsed gently in her hands, reflecting the courage, curiosity, and hope that now filled the hearts of humans. And as Elias watched, he realized that the ugly gift had become something extraordinary, a bridge to the cosmos, a guide to knowledge, and a reminder that true beauty was found in trust, wonder, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. The days following the first attack were tense. On the Aurora, every crew member moved with purpose, aware that their work with Zyra had drawn attention beyond their station. Earth authorities were still wary, and unknown fleets patrolled nearby space, curious or perhaps threatening. Elias Kane knew they had only scratched the surface of what Zyra's gift could do. The stars in her hands were more than a map, they were a guide to the universe itself, and someone, somewhere, wanted it. Elias stood beside Zyra in the observation chamber, watching her shift and shimmer in the zero-gravity light. The stars she held floated delicately between their hands, pulsing gently in response to their combined thoughts. He felt a strange comfort in the rhythm of their glow, as though the universe itself was whispering encouragement. "You sense it too, don't you?" he asked softly. Zyra tilted her head, and the vibrations that passed through the chamber confirmed it. There was another presence nearby, one that they had not detected before. It was subtle, a ripple in space that did not belong to any known fleet or probe. Elias frowned. Whoever or whatever it was, it had the intelligence to move undetected and possibly with intent. The next morning, the sensors picked up faint energy signatures approaching the station. This time, it was closer, faster, and more deliberate. The crew scrambled, preparing defenses, but Elias held his hand up. "We wait," he said. "We observe first. We don't know who they are yet." Zyra extended her hands, and the stars began to swirl faster, forming complex patterns that filled the chamber with soft light. Elias studied them carefully. The stars were showing him strategies, possibilities, ways to protect the station without violence. Zyra's gift had always been about collaboration, not destruction, and he understood that now. When the unknown fleet finally appeared on the sensors, it was unlike anything humanity had encountered. The ships were sleek, black, and angular, designed for speed and stealth. They did not follow the traditional rules of human spacecraft. Their energy signatures flickered in unpredictable ways, making them difficult to track or target. It was clear they were advanced, intelligent, and potentially hostile. Elias gathered the crew. "We need to work together, not just as scientists or engineers, but as one mind. Zyra is with us. We have the gift, and if we trust it, we can face this challenge." The crew nodded, and a calm focus settled over the station. Zyra floated at the center, her form shifting with purpose, the stars in her hands arranging themselves like a living shield. Elias took a deep breath and allowed his thoughts to merge with the patterns, feeling the hum of energy flow through him. The first wave of ships arrived suddenly, firing energy pulses that slammed against the station's shields. The crew watched, tense, as the pulses seemed to distort and slow in the presence of the stars. Elias moved his hands, directing the energy with Zyra's guidance. Barriers of light formed, bending and shifting in response to the attacks. Each movement was a combination of human strategy and alien intuition. The fleet tested their defenses relentlessly. Each attack was stronger, faster, more unpredictable. But the crew adapted, learning from the stars and from one another. Mara Chen worked alongside Elias, channeling energy flows into makeshift devices that enhanced the shields. Biologists monitored the energy's effect on life support, ensuring that no one on the station was harmed. Every department, every crew member, had a role. Hours passed in a blur of focus and concentration. The attackers adjusted to every defense, probing for weaknesses, but the combination of human ingenuity and Zyra's gift proved difficult to overcome. The stars responded to thought, reshaping themselves in patterns the enemy could not anticipate. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Elias realized that the key was not brute force. The enemy relied on technology, but they did not understand creativity or intuition. The stars, guided by human minds, were unpredictable. Each barrier, each pulse of energy, was unique, designed by thinking, learning, and improvising together. The attackers had expected humans to be predictable, but humans were anything but. Finally, the enemy ships began to retreat. Their movements became erratic as they failed to penetrate the defenses. Elias and Zyra watched as the fleet disappeared into the distance, leaving behind only silence. The station had survived. They had prevailed without violence, using collaboration, strategy, and understanding as their greatest weapons. The crew exhaled collectively, tension melting into relief. For a moment, the station was quiet, except for the soft glow of the stars floating in Zyra's hands. Elias reached out, letting the cluster drift between his palms. "You did it," he said softly. Zyra shifted, her vibrations carrying what he interpreted as acknowledgement and pride. But there was no time to celebrate. The attack had revealed a truth they could not ignore. Others were watching. Others would come. The stars in Zyra's hands held secrets that could reshape the galaxy. And not everyone would use that knowledge wisely. Elias knew they had to prepare, to understand the gift fully before anyone else could take advantage of it. In the days that followed, the crew worked tirelessly. They explored the deeper functions of the stars, discovering that they could simulate environments, test hypotheses, and even predict phenomena in distant systems. Zyra guided them, her presence calming and inspiring. She had traveled across galaxies to reach humanity, and now her gift was teaching humans to think beyond themselves, beyond fear, beyond limitations. The crew began to notice changes in themselves. Fear no longer dominated their decisions. Curiosity replaced hesitation, and cooperation replaced distrust. Differences were no longer barriers, they were strengths. The station became a place of learning, creativity, and unity. Humans and alien worked together in harmony, discovering solutions that neither could have achieved alone. Elias spent long hours alone with Zyra, studying the stars and discussing possibilities in ways that transcended language. The vibrations, colors, and movements carried meaning that words could not. He felt himself growing, expanding his mind in ways that were exhilarating and humbling. He realized that the stars were teaching not just knowledge, but wisdom. One evening, while observing the patterns, Elias noticed something extraordinary. The stars had begun to align themselves into shapes resembling constellations from Earth, but also patterns unknown to human science. They were forming maps, not just of space, but of energy networks that spanned galaxies. He realized that these patterns could guide humanity to new forms of travel, communication, and resource management. Mara joined him, her eyes wide with excitement. "Do you see this?" she asked. "It's like the stars are alive. They're showing us connections we never imagined." Elias nodded. "Yes. And if we understand this, we can unlock possibilities that no human has ever dreamed of. We just have to keep learning, keep trusting, and keep working together." As they studied, the station's sensors picked up another signal, faint but unmistakable. Another fleet, larger this time, was approaching. Elias felt the tension rise again. This would be a greater challenge, one that would test everything they had learned. But he also felt confidence. They were no longer just humans reacting to alien forces, they were a team, united with Zyra and the stars in her hands. The crew gathered, each member prepared for the confrontation. Elias spoke calmly. "We have faced the unknown and survived. Now, we will face it again. Not with fear, but with creativity, courage, and collaboration. Zyra is with us, and the gift she has given us is more powerful than any weapon. We will protect it, and we will protect each other." The stars in Zyra's hands pulsed in response, reflecting the determination of every person on the station. As the new fleet approached, Elias felt a surge of hope. They were no longer victims of circumstance. They were explorers, thinkers, and creators. With Zyra and her gift, they could face the universe with confidence and curiosity. When the enemy ships came into view, the crew was ready. They activated the stars fully, letting the lights swirl, expand, and form protective patterns. The energy flowed according to thought and intuition, guided by human creativity and Zyra's alien wisdom. Each attack was met with a response that was unique, unpredictable, and effective. Hours passed in a tense dance of strategy and focus. The enemy tried every tactic they could imagine, but the stars, guided by humans, were always one step ahead. Finally, the fleet withdrew, unable to overcome the defenses. The station was safe, and the crew had proven their strength, not through brute force, but through understanding, collaboration, and innovation. As the stars dimmed to their gentle glow, Elias looked at Zyra. "We've learned so much," he said. "Not just about the universe, but about ourselves. Fear can destroy, but trust and curiosity can create. Difference can divide, but collaboration can unite. And beauty is found in understanding and courage, not just in appearance. Zyra's form shimmered softly, the stars floating between their hands like a heartbeat. Elias knew that this moment would stay with him forever. Humanity had survived a test of courage and creativity, and they had grown stronger for it. Outside the observation window, the universe stretched endlessly, full of mysteries and possibilities. Elias realized that the stars in Zyra's hands were more than a gift. They were a bridge to the cosmos, a guide to knowledge, and a reminder that humanity could achieve greatness when it trusted itself and the unknown. The weeks following the second attack were filled with a mixture of relief and determination. The crew of the Aurora knew that their victory had been hard-earned, and that the universe held more challenges than they could yet imagine. But they also knew something deeper. Humanity had begun to understand itself in a new way. The stars in Zyra's hands had become more than a gift. They were a guide, a teacher, and a symbol of what humans could achieve when they embraced the unknown. Elias Kane stood at the observation window, watching distant galaxies spin slowly in the blackness of space. Zyra hovered beside him, her form shimmering gently, the stars floating above her palms like miniature suns. Together, they had explored the patterns, decoded the energy networks, and discovered possibilities that no human mind alone could conceive. And now, Elias felt that it was time for the next step, one that would test not just skill or knowledge, but courage and trust. "Are we ready?" Mara asked, joining them. Her eyes reflected the soft glow of the stars, wide with anticipation. Elias nodded. "We have learned more than we ever thought possible. But the universe is vast, and we cannot wait for challenges to find us. We must move forward." Zyra extended her hands, and the stars pulsed brightly, forming intricate patterns that spread across the room. Elias followed the patterns with his thoughts, feeling the gentle guidance of her gift. The stars seemed to respond to each member of the crew individually, adapting to their skills, their creativity, and their intentions. It was as if the universe itself was alive, offering its secrets to those brave enough to reach out. The next challenge came faster than they expected. Sensors picked up a massive anomaly in a nearby sector of space, a swirling mass of energy unlike anything recorded in human history. It pulsed with intensity, sending waves through the station's instruments. Elias realized immediately that this was not a natural phenomenon. The patterns suggested intelligence, perhaps even a civilization far beyond their own. "We don't know what we're dealing with," Elias said, addressing the crew. "But we have the gift, and we have each other. If we approach this with fear, we will fail. If we approach it with understanding, we may succeed beyond anything we imagined." The crew prepared for departure. The Aurora moved carefully through space, guided by Zyra's stars. Each course correction, each calculation, was assisted by the living patterns she projected. The anomaly grew larger in their sensors, swirling like a storm of light and energy, impossible to measure with conventional instruments. Yet, as Elias studied the stars, he began to see order within the chaos. There were rhythms, repetitions, and structures that suggested intelligence. When they finally approached the heart of the anomaly, the station was enveloped in a glow unlike anything they had ever seen. Colors shifted across the spectrum, bending in ways that made the eyes ache and the mind race. Energy pulsed through the hull, but the stars formed protective layers, absorbing the currents and translating them into patterns the humans could comprehend. It was there, in that luminous storm, that they realized the true power of Zyra's gift. The stars were not just a map. They were a language, a way to communicate with the universe itself. Elias and the crew began to interact with the energy, sending pulses, shifts, and gestures that mirrored the patterns of the stars. Slowly, the anomaly responded. Waves of energy adjusted, forming shapes that were almost human, almost alien, and yet entirely alive. Hours passed, with the crew and Zyra working in harmony. They learned to anticipate the flows, to respond to the subtle cues hidden within the light. It was exhausting, challenging every skill and every ounce of focus they possessed. And yet, it was exhilarating. For the first time, humans were not just observers of the cosmos, they were participants, co-creators with an intelligence far beyond their own. As the anomaly began to stabilize, a form emerged from the swirling energy. It was immense, fluid, and radiant, with patterns of light shifting across its surface. The crew understood that it was aware, intelligent, and capable of thought. Elias reached for the stars, letting them float between his hands and Zyra's. He focused on trust, on curiosity, and on understanding rather than fear. Slowly, the being seemed to respond, its patterns mirroring theirs, as if acknowledging the connection. Mara whispered, "It's beautiful." Elias nodded. Not just its appearance, its intelligence, its presence. It's teaching us, and we are learning. That is beauty, in its purest form. For days, they remained within the anomaly, communicating through the patterns of the stars. The being shared knowledge in ways humans had never imagined, routes through space that bypassed natural obstacles, energy sources that could power civilizations, and insights into life that spanned galaxies. The crew absorbed everything they could, knowing that each lesson was precious and unique. Through it all, Zyra remained at the center, guiding, translating, and connecting. She had arrived as the ugliest gift in human eyes. But now she was the bridge between species, a living testament to trust, understanding, and courage. Elias often caught himself watching her, marveling not at her appearance, but at her presence, her intelligence, and the way she brought out the best in humanity. The anomaly finally stabilized completely, the energy being receded, leaving behind a faint glow that continued to pulse in harmony with the stars. The Aurora and its crew had succeeded, not by destroying, but by communicating and collaborating. Elias realized that this was the essence of the gift. Zyra had brought a lesson in cooperation, understanding, and the limitless potential of human creativity when paired with wisdom from beyond. Returning to the station, the crew found that the experience had changed them. Each member carried a new sense of purpose, a deeper understanding of the universe, and a renewed confidence in themselves and in one another. Human minds had expanded, not just with knowledge, but with perspective. They had seen fear, curiosity, courage, and beauty in forms beyond their imagination, and they had embraced it all. Elias held one of the stars, letting it float between his hands. Zyra mirrored him, and the stars pulsed softly, like the heartbeat of the cosmos itself. He spoke quietly, as if to himself. "You have given us more than knowledge. You have shown us what we can be when we trust, when we create, and when we embrace the unknown." Zyra shifted, her form shimmering with colors that reflected the sentiment. The stars pulsed brighter, sending gentle vibrations through the room. It was acknowledgement, approval, and encouragement, all at once. Elias understood that humanity's journey was just beginning, but that they were ready for what lay ahead. Outside the station, stars sparkled endlessly, galaxies turning slowly in the blackness of space. For the first time, humans did not feel small or insignificant. They felt connected, capable, and alive in ways they had never imagined. They had faced fear and uncertainty, survived attacks, and learned from a being entirely different from themselves. They had taken a step into the universe that would shape their future forever. The gift Zyra had brought, the stars, the knowledge, and the lessons, remained a beacon of hope. It reminded them that beauty is not always found in appearances, but in courage, trust, understanding, and the willingness to reach beyond oneself. Humanity had been tested, and it had risen to the challenge. They had learned that intelligence, creativity, and empathy could overcome fear, and that the unknown was not something to dread, but to embrace. As the Aurora drifted through space, Elias looked at Zyra one last time before turning to the crew. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The universe is vast. There will be challenges, there will be wonders we cannot imagine, but we have what it takes. Together, with understanding and courage, we can face anything." Zyra extended her hands, and the stars floated between them, glowing softly in harmony with the hearts of all who watched. In that moment, humanity felt more than hope. They felt purpose, connection, and the boundless possibility of the future. The stars, once a mysterious gift, were now a part of humanity's story. They were a symbol of collaboration, courage, and the beauty of embracing the unknown. And as Elias watched them pulse in Zyra's hands, he knew that humanity had finally begun to claim its place among the stars, ready to explore, to learn, and to create wonders that no one had ever thought possible. The universe stretched before them, infinite and alive. Humanity had taken its first steps into a new era, guided by trust, guided by curiosity, and guided by a gift from a being they had once called strange and ugly. But now, that gift was the most beautiful thing they had ever known. And as the Aurora sailed onward, carrying its crew and its alien friend into the vastness of space, one truth was clear. Humans, when united with courage and understanding, could achieve greatness beyond measure. They were not alone. They were not small. And they were ready to shine among the stars.